Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into a really fascinating journey, a strategic postmortem on what is arguably one of the most dramatic corporate collapses in modern business history. We are looking closely at the fall of the Nokia empire, and we're going to dissect exactly how a seemingly invincible, untouchable giant completely lost its footing.
Seriously, think about this for a second. At one point, Nokia controlled the mobile phone industry. Then, in just a few years, it lost everything. How did this happen? It's a mystery that literally still haunts boardrooms today. I mean, how does a massive company go from absolute global supremacy to fighting for its very survival in less than a decade? Well, to answer that, we have to look past the products themselves and peer directly into the minds of their leadership.
So let's set the stage with Section 1, the global Nokia empire. Before we can that strategic agility, it led them straight to the #1 spot. Throughout the 1990s, Nokia's leadership aggressively outmaneuvered competitors to become the absolute biggest phone company in the world. Their executive board successfully navigated this incredibly complex technological landscape to capture a level of global market dominance that was frankly entirely unprecedented. But here's the catch. This very dominance began breeding a really dangerous corporate mindset. Let's be real. We all remember those iconic Nokia phones that dominated the market. They were in literally everyone's pockets, praised for their durability, like they were practically indestructible, their endless battery life, and their reliability. During these peak years, Nokia's brand felt completely invincible. But as we'll see, invincibility is often just a strategic delusion held by executives, masking a fatal vulnerability. That brings us to Section 2, the smartphone strategic blind spot. Okay. Picture this. The year is 2007, and a massive disconnect is about to emerge in the industry. Nokia's legacy leadership viewed mobile phones fundamentally through a hardware lens. They firmly believed that superior physical engineering would always win out. Meanwhile, emerging competitors, like Apple, introduced an entirely software-focused ecosystem. So Nokia was effectively playing checkers, while new competitors had just walked in and introduced 3D chess to the board. And that right there is the very essence of a strategic blind spot. It's a critical failure by corporate leadership to recognize a fundamental shift in the industry's competitive landscape. Nokia didn't just passively miss a trend here. Their executives actively looked at early touchscreen devices and strategically dismissed them. Why? Simply because these new products didn't align with their historical data models of what a phone quote-unquote should be. Because of that massive blind spot, Nokia ran headfirst into a monumental software struggle. As competitors sprinted ahead with highly intuitive, touch-centric operating systems, Nokia's internal development teams were totally siloed and honestly severely mismanaged by the board. They were stuck trying to patch together legacy software that was never designed for the modern era, which left them entirely disconnected from what the consumers suddenly demanded. And as you'd expect, the market shifted rapidly. As Nokia's historic market share stagnated and then absolutely plummeted, iOS and Android exploded onto the scene. Samsung aggressively executed the exact flexible software strategy Nokia's leadership had ignored, delivering modern ecosystems at a massive, global scale. Which leads us right into Section 3, fatal corporate management mistakes. So, how did an executive board full of incredibly smart people allow their market share to just evaporate? Well, inside the boardroom, a fatal cognitive dissonance took hold. You had leadership expecting guaranteed success based entirely on past dominance, completely detached from the harsh reality that their innovation was severely lagging. Management was making huge strategic decisions based on a world that simply no longer existed. And the symptoms of this sluggish culture? They were lethal. First, you had deep complacency, born from years of really easy victories. Second, this endless corporate bureaucracy that suffocated great ideas in endless, pointless meetings. Third, a really dangerous tendency to underestimate their rivals. And finally, pure internal hubris. They genuinely believed they knew better than the market. Which, of course, forces us to ask a totally crucial corporate strategy question. Why didn't Nokia's leadership pivot faster? The sad truth is, their organizational structure had become so incredibly rigid, and middle management had become so fearful of failing, that executing a massive global shift to meet the software revolution was essentially impossible. Let's look at the fallout in Section 4, the flawed Microsoft partnership. As the mobile phone business went into a steep, undeniable decline, a desperate new management team attempted a massive strategic Hail Mary. They finally, painfully acknowledged the massive loss of market share and formed a sweeping partnership to abandon their own struggling software. Instead, they'd adopt the Windows operating system exclusively. On paper, matching Nokia's hardware with Microsoft's software sounded like a potential industry savior. But, as we know, this strategic lifeline was simply too little, too late. By the time this partnership actually brought competitive devices to the market, the Android and iOS duopoly had already won the war. Consumers and developers had firmly chosen their sides, leaving literally no oxygen in the room for a third massive ecosystem to take root. The final result was the complete and total loss of mobile market dominance. The situation became so financially unsustainable that a defeated Nokia was forced to do the unthinkable. They sold off their entire once mighty mobile phone division to Microsoft. Just like that, the empire had officially fallen. Finally, Section 5, Leadership Lessons and Aftermath. We've seen the collapse, right? But what happens next? What did life after mobile actually look like? Well, Nokia survived because leadership ultimately realized they had to pivot back to their historical roots in telecom infrastructure. They transformed into a completely different kind of back-end network provider. They survived, for sure, but their days of dictating global consumer culture, those were over. The corporate lessons here are just undeniable. First, innovate constantly. Past success guarantees absolutely nothing about the future. Second, fiercely eradicate complacency in your ranks. Third, recognize when the rules of the game change, like realizing software had become king. And crucially, structure your leadership to adopt swiftly the exact moment the market demands it. Perhaps this brilliant quote perfectly encapsulates the whole Nokia story. Success breeds complacency. Complacency breeds failure. Only the paranoid survive. Nokia lost their paranoia. They got comfortable. And in the fast-paced world of technology, comfort is lethal. Even the mightiest empires will crumble if leadership stops aggressively adapting to change. So, I want you to look at your own work, your own projects, or your own business. Is your organization too comfortable with its current success? Are you ignoring a strategic blind spot right now just because things are currently going well? Something to think about. Thank you so much for exploring this corporate postmortem with me. Keep asking the tough questions, stay adaptable, and I'll see you in the next explainer.